Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Michael O'Brien. I'm here today in the Economics Times office with Miami citizen Andrew Staple, who has a major in microeconomics from the University of Pennsylvania. How are you, Andrew?
I'm very well. Thanks for having me here today.
No, it's my pleasure. The purpose of this invitation is to discuss the post-effects of Hurricane Irma in Florida and its economic implications. As most of you know, this Sunday, September 10th, deadly Hurricane Irma hit the state of Florida, and the post-disaster effects of it have been devastating. According to the government reports, the most affected area was one of South Florida. This area of Florida has been heavily affected in regards to the water resources. Not only has the hurricane damaged the main tube of the water distribution system of the area, but the power outage has also disabled further water bottle production by companies in the area, seeing as their production processes are highly automated and require electricity to operate.
Yeah, Michael, the effects of it have definitely been very significant both socially and economically. Personally, the most devastating part of this whole situation is the scarcity of water that has been created by what you previously explained. I mean, there's still a dramatic scarcity of water as we speak due to the blocked roads that limit the speed with which engineers can move around and repair the distribution system and even reboot the electricity grid. The worst part of all is that water is a basic need for survival, and if the government doesn't find a solution quickly, fatality rates might increase significantly above the count of 54 that the FDEM, or the Florida Division of Emergency and Management, has already reported.
Yeah, Andrew, and adding to what you said about water being a basic need for survival, I was shocked by the ridiculous price increase by retail companies like Walmart. Despite the increased demand for this necessity, and like many others in Twitter, I don't know if you saw, I find it immoral for a company to increase the price of one 24-unit pack of water from $10 to $100. In my opinion, it's not okay for a company to take advantage of the higher demand for water caused by a crisis like this one, as a measure of boosting up short-term profits. I understand that there is a limited amount of 700 water bottles for a whole population of South Florida, and that this can be used at a very quick pace. But it still stands still on the side of anti-gouging laws. That being said, I want to ask you, why wouldn't the government establish a price gouging law to limit the unethical price increase of water by profit-seeking and social unaware companies?
Well, first of all, it's important to understand that price gouging laws are regulations that limit the increase or decrease of the prices of products. In this case, the one of a hurricane. And these laws are directed towards companies looking to increase short-term profits without considering the social and economic implications. And in response to your question, if the government would have made the decision of applying a price ceiling, then a supply shortage would have been created in the short run, which would then lead to economic disequilibrium. In other words, the quantity demanded by consumers would have been significantly higher than the quantity producers were able to supply, especially because of the fact that companies cannot produce more water currently. This is not a good sign. Maybe in the long run, some companies might find a way to continue the production of water bottles, but in the short run, there would most likely be no way for them to produce more water bottles. By keeping the price of water low, consumers are going to buy in larger quantities based on the belief that they will need a lot of it in the future due to the circumstances of a natural disaster or just a hurricane in general, and this once again will lead to a shortage. For example, if the consumers of South Florida, due to the hurricane, demanded an increased quantity of, let's say, 8 million water bottles, evidently there will be a supply shortage of 1 million water bottles.
Well, Andrew, wouldn't it be better for prices to stay low for people with different financial situations so they can all afford the water and fulfill their needs?
Not necessarily. With lower prices, one does not assure that the water is being directed towards consumers who need it the most. For example, a person who, apart from being affected by Hurricane Irma, was sick would be more willing to pay for water at a higher price, while a person who does not need it as dramatically would probably put in the effort to find a substitute good. As another point of view, keeping prices low, as Michael Giberson says, discourages the conservation of needed goods at exactly the time when they are in high demand. What this means is that people, by buying water at a low price, have the feeling that they can consume a lot of it, when that is not necessarily the case. Not only this, but what the temporary price ceiling is really doing is simply postponing the price surge to the long run. This will occur because after the price ceiling is removed, the shortage would still be present, meaning that the price will skyrocket at that time later on. Consequently, lower income families would be affected after the hurricane instead of during and by the price surge. From a business perspective, this would not be sustainable in the short run, seeing as businesses would not be able to fulfill the quantity demanded by consumers. Maybe in the long run, producers might find a way to continue production and make their businesses sustainable despite the circumstances. However, we have to focus on the fact that natural disasters are based on short-run scenarios.
I understand the economical point of view that you're suggesting. However, letting prices rise doesn't necessarily mean that the consumers who need it the most will be actually getting it. Branching off from the scenario you previously introduced, it's not always correct to say that the sick person will be the one buying the water at the higher price. This might be sometimes the case, but cannot be taken for granted due to the fact that consumers don't only have to be willing, also be able to buy the product. Based on this idea, there might be a scenario where even though the person who does not need the water as much doesn't buy it, the sick person does not have the financial resources to buy it either. This means that the water being competed for will not end up in either hands of another consumer who heavily needs the water, or someone who is making him or herself safer during the disaster. In response to the last point you made, I don't believe that it can be assumed that citizens will use water outrageously. I think that most consumers in the affected areas will make sure to use their resources wisely, since at the end date of the hurricane is unknown.
Well, I guess what you're trying to introduce is the idea of greed versus need, which is another alternate explanation that we could summarize, that could summarize the multiple scenarios we could debate in here for a lifetime. Greed versus need is the concept that compares when a consumer buys products as a greedy individual or as one who considers the needs of others or simply aware of those other needs. This idea or concept is the basis of the examples that we were talking about earlier. Faced with the scarcity of water, a consumer can decide to buy with greed, meaning buying in large quantities to have for the tough future, or buying based on need, which means buying as much as needed to leave some for others. However, Michael, this idea puts things in an overly simplistic manner. Based on what you previously said, it can be summarized that a supply shortage would occur, which is bad for the economy, and especially during and after a natural disaster. Now that I have the opportunity to talk to a person like you, who is on the other side of the debate, what possible solutions do you offer to place alongside price gouging laws in order to avoid the reckless use of a scarce resource such as water at this time?
And that's a great question that we're going to answer after the break. And we're back. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. We will now continue our discussion with my answer to Andrew's question, who was, what alternate solutions do I think could be placed alongside price gouging laws in order to avoid reckless use of scarce supply? You know, Andrew, one of the things that the government could have done alongside imposing a price ceiling on water was establishing a rational system that uses rational tickets to determine how many water bottles a person can buy at any given store or any given time. Through this approach, the government could regulate demand to distribute resources fairly amongst the South Floridian population. This makes sense because a rational system will do the job of controlling the high consumer demand for water and keeping price lows at the same time.
I see your point, but how is this fair? I mean, in the end, you're giving the same amount of resources to every individual without considering their different needs, which technically is not an effective allocation of the currently scarce resource of water. Furthermore, considering the fact that water bottle companies are not able to produce more water bottles due to the fact that there's a power outage in the area, how would the government obtain these extra water bottles?
Well, Andrew, these water bottles will come from the ones currently available in the area, and when those are finished, companies from other non-affected parts of Florida will have to bring water bottles and sell them there.
Aha, you just fell right on the trap I was hoping to use to begin another point. I want you to be aware that if a price ceiling is imposed on water, companies from non-affected areas of Florida would not have a significant enough profit incentive to bring water to the distressed areas. Think about this from a business perspective. Why would a company want to go through the struggles of moving through blocked roads to sell water at the same price that they would be selling them where they were located before. Unless this is a company with a strong corporate social responsibility program, the business would not go for this option, seeing as it would end up cutting down on their short-term profits. As a result, a rationing system could work, but only in the short run. But once water supply is rationed to all the affected individuals, where would the rest of the water come from?
This water will have to become part of the government liability sheet. What I mean by this is that the government, as a measure of bringing more water to the distressed area, will have to subsidize water companies in other parts of Florida for them to come to this distressed area. After having been subsidized, the price consumers will be paying for the water bottles will be lower than the equilibrium price. Once again, these extra water bottles could be fairly rationed to the population.
That's a viable point, but now there's another problem. Given the fact that individuals have different needs, consumers would take this as an opportunity to engage in black market trading for the rationing tickets or even the water bottles themselves. Many times, when governments impose rationing systems in the economy, the side effect of a black market occurs. The main explanation for the creation of black markets are the different needs of people in Florida. Seeing as everyone is receiving an equal amount of water, maybe someone who doesn't need that much water would be willing and able to sell their extra water or their leftover water in the black market at a higher price, and this to actually make a profit off of it.
Wait. Andrew, correct me if I'm wrong, but did you just say that people will reach out to higher prices in the black market? If that's the case, wouldn't that have serious implications in the government?
That's right. A person who is looking to obtain more water than what their ration provides would be willing to pay a higher price for bottles of water through the black market. And as you mentioned, this could lead to losses in government revenue due to tax evasion and an alteration within the economy of Florida. In other words, by opening the gates of black markets, the government is losing tax revenue that could have been used to fix the main water source, subsidize external water companies, and/or help the reconstruction of distressed areas.
Now that we're arriving to the time limit of this episode, I would like to finish off with your opinion of what is the decision that the government should make in regard to prices and Hurricane Irma.
Well, as I have learned in my experience as a professional who works with a lot of microeconomic data, I believe that the government should simply stay away from the free market and let it regulate itself. In this way, even though in the short run, lower income families would be affected by the price increase, resources would be effectively allocated. Furthermore, this leaves both consumers and producers better off. Not only will consumers avoid suffering the eventual price hike that would occur to water bottles, but also producers could enjoy further profits that could be used to replenish their water bottle supply in the long run after the side effects of Hurricane Irma have ceased.
You know, something I've definitely learned in this debate we have is the fact that economists, no offense, assume a lot of things. I've also learned, however, that government intervention, especially during a natural disaster, is a debatable topic. To finalize this episode, once again, thank you, Andrew, for being here today. And ladies and gentlemen, thanks for your attention and see you in the next episode of Economic Times.